The descent engines hissed as the shuttle kissed down on the rust-colored soil of Cauldres 4. A sterile wind skittered dust across the landing zone, teasing at the edges of polished boots and brushed uniforms. The Galactic delegation stepped onto the new colony site like royalty arriving at a conquered province. Back straight, nostrils flared, unimpressed. Lieutenant Darren Holt dropped from a human transport last, his boots hitting the dirt with a solid thunk. He slung a metal toolbox over one shoulder, the weight making his gait slightly uneven. The aliens noticed. A Delxery engineer, all jointed limbs and glowing eye ridges, tilted its head at the battered kit. "Did you bring relics from your species' Bronze Age, human?" Holt didn't miss a beat.
"Nah.
Bronze is for amateurs. This is good old forged steel. It's the future, just slower." Polite laughter rippled among the Galactic elite. A Shaylitan official, floating above the ground in its pressure-stabilized hover disk, pulsed a light pink glow of mock sympathy. "We appreciate your cultural diversity, but this planet is ready for synthesis protocols. No need to, how do humans say, play in the dirt?" Holt didn't answer right away. He turned slowly, scanning the horizon, dry mesas in the distance, a pale blue sky overhead. The site was fresh, no vegetation, no native life, and no replicator-generated water. Just a blank canvas and some very thirsty colonists. Commander Renna, the human liaison to the joint project, stepped up beside Holt. "You'll get used to them," she muttered under her breath. "They're allergic to anything that doesn't plug into a port." "Do we know what's underneath us?"
Holt asked.
"Seismographs say stable. Geological scans show mineral seams, but water's scarce. The Galactics want to use atmospheric pullers. You know, high-yield condensers. And if those fail? They won't, they say." He grunted, not impressed. Later, at the Central Logistics Dome, an emergency alert pinged through the camp's network. The replicator array responsible for producing water condensers had glitched. Bad code, corrupted cache, redundant system failure, the usual cocktail. ETA for repairs. 5 days, maybe 6. The sun was already climbing. "No water means no colony," Renna said grimly. "Not with temps hitting 40 Celsius during the day." The alien delegation huddled in high-frequency argument, swapping sensor data and proposing increasingly convoluted solutions. Holt, unnoticed at the periphery, set down his toolbox. "I'll dig a well," he said. Silence, like a dropped wrench on metal. Then laughter. "Dig," chirped the Delxery. "With what?" "That tiny axe-shaped stick." "It's called a shovel," Holt said evenly. "And yeah, with that." "You plan to locate aquifers with no drones? No gravity mapping?" "I'll figure it out. Start with the lay of the land, test the soil, follow the sediment path downhill. It's not rocket science." A Karathi surveyor blinked all 6 eyes. Humans continue to astound with their commitment to inefficiency. "Funny thing about inefficiency," Holt replied, pulling out a small folding trowel and walking toward the southern slope. "It tends to work when the power's out." He found a low point near the edge of a dry wash, where sediment had layered thick and soft. He knelt, scooped a handful of dust, rubbed it between calloused fingers. Gritty, fine moisture traces. Not much, but enough. He drove the shovel into the earth with a satisfying chunk, metal biting into packed ground. The rhythm settled in quickly. Dig, lift, toss. The sun climbed. Sweat beaded his brow. Drones hovered overhead, recording the madness like spectators at a gladiator match. Hours passed. A few junior engineers wandered over. One offered him a hydration pack. Another asked, reluctantly, why he was peeling layers back manually instead of sonic scanning them. "You don't hear the soil when you scan it," he said simply. "Can't feel it resist, shift, settle. I want to know what's down here, not guess." At the 6-foot mark, the soil changed. The texture went dense, then crumbly. He paused, knelt again, pressed his hand flat to the bottom. Vibrations, faint but steady. Too subtle for machines tuned for seismic spikes. A natural beat, almost. He looked up. "Something's moving down there." The Delxury engineer, who'd been watching from a distance with mild fascination, flicked its wrist dismissively. Microshifts. Thermal expansion. Our instruments saw nothing significant. Your instruments aren't touching the ground. Rena appeared at his side, frowning. Holt, the Galactics are ready to deploy their drilling pods. They think they've found a better aquifer zone. He wiped sweat from his brow. Tell them not to. This isn't right. There's a fault line under that zone. I can feel it. They ran deep seismic sweeps. The data looks clean. I don't care.
Tell them.
Or get ready to explain why your new colony falls into a sinkhole before dinner. Rena hesitated. Then, I'll stall them. 10 minutes. No promises. Holt nodded and went back to digging. Below the 6-foot mark, the ground warmed unnaturally. He tested the air with a sensor. Slightly elevated carbon dioxide, no hydrogen sulfide.
Odd.
The layers were arranged like insulation, heat trapped beneath a cool cap. Not natural. He knelt again, pressing his palm to the soil, closing his eyes. The vibration was stronger now, rhythmic. Purposeful. Not a tremor. A pulse. He stood slowly, turning to look back toward the camp. The drilling rigs were beginning to move. He muttered to himself, "They're digging in the wrong place." Then louder, to no one in particular. And worse, they have no idea what they're digging into. He planted the shovel back into the dirt, leaned on it, and stared toward the rising sun. Something was under this planet, and it didn't like to be disturbed. The drilling began at precisely 0700, as scheduled, without ceremony or second opinions. From the edge of the dig site, Lieutenant Holt watched a swarm of gleaming machines unfold like chrome insects. The Galactics called them precision core extractors. Holt called them overconfident toys with too much voltage. One of the Delxury engineers floated by on a mag plate, pausing briefly to smirk in his direction. Try not to strain yourself with your stick. We'll have 100,000 liters processed by midday. Careful, Holt said, not looking up. You're poking a beehive you don't even know exists. The Delxury gave a trill of amusement and glided off. Rena arrived minutes later, face taut with restrained irritation. They overruled me, she said, crouching near Holt's trench. Said your concerns weren't supported by instrumental evidence. They called it superstition. I'm flattered, Holt muttered, driving the shovel in again. They think I've got a religion. Turns out, I just listen to dirt. He reached into the hole and pulled out a jagged fragment of dark stone, unnaturally smooth on one side. He rubbed it with his thumb. Faint grooves. Artificial.
Rena leaned in.
That's not sediment. Nope. Before they could examine further, the ground shuddered. A low-frequency groan rolled through the soil, too deep to be wind, too broad to be machine. Holt felt it in his bones, and judging by the way Rena's eyes widened, so did she. Tell me that was your fault, she said. Nope, he replied again, this time with less sarcasm. From across the basin came a sharp crack, followed by a rumble that rose in pitch like a hungry animal. The nearest drilling pod began to list, its stabilizers shrieking in protest. Then the ground beneath it collapsed. Holt scrambled out of his trench as an entire section of terrain caved in. Machinery vanished into the opening, which widened into a yawning chasm. Panic shouts erupted from alien crews, but the machines kept working, automated, unthinking, loyal to their programming even as they fell. A second pod lurched sideways and toppled into the void. The sky filled with dust. Rena shouted something into her comm, barking orders to suspend all activity. The Galactics ignored her at first, protocols, hierarchy, language lag. But when the third pod tipped and vanished like a toy sucked down a drain, the message got through. Silence followed. Heavy, reluctant silence. Holt stood on the edge of the new abyss, watching faint pulses of light flicker far below. It wasn't just a hole. It was a door. Rena arrived beside him, eyes scanning the data on her wrist console. No seismic events reported. Nothing on the logs. This wasn't on any of the scans. It wasn't natural, Holt said. Whatever's under us, it's active. And pissed. A Galatine noble floated toward them, shimmering with iridescent scales and vibrating faintly in a show of agitation. This incident is most unfortunate. We will initiate a root cause analysis immediately. Too late for that, Holt snapped. You dug blind. I told you the ground was unstable. You had no telemetry. I had the soil, the shape of it, the tension in the layers. There were signs. The Galatine blinked once, slowly. Your species remains an anomaly. Reliance on subjective sensation instead of quantifiable inputs is inefficient. Efficiency doesn't matter when you've just opened the lid on something buried for a few million years, Holt said. Something with a pulse. Rena held up her console, showing the recent readouts. We're getting heat spikes, magnetic surges, and she paused. Localized radiation signatures. This wasn't just a cavern. Holt looked back to the fragment in his hand. The artificial grooves seemed deeper now. Not writing, more like circuitry. Old, dead, and somehow still humming. We need to figure out what this is before anyone else drills again, he said. Rena nodded. Agreed. But the Galactics already filed an incident report with Central Authority. Reinforcements will arrive in less than 48 hours. And they'll bring more toys. They'll bring excavators. And analysis drones. And AI decision cores. Holt looked out at the fractured Earth. They'll bring everything but common sense. A klaxon sounded from the remaining drill rig. Status failure. Overload. System shut off. Holt sprinted toward it, Rena on his heels. They climbed the ridge, where the last pod still perched, half unburied from its descent. Inside, the interface panel was fried, static and flickering glyphs. This wasn't equipment stress, Rena muttered, tapping through logs. This was a feedback pulse. From below. Holt climbed around the pod and stared down into the chasm. Faint light moved in the dark, slow and deliberate. Not a reflection. Not a flare. A sequence. Like a heartbeat. I think we just knocked on something's front door, he said. Rena cursed softly in 2 languages. What do you want to do? He opened his toolkit and pulled out a handheld seismograph, analog, ruggedized, half-retired from formal service. He adjusted the settings manually and lowered the probe into the hole by rope. This thing's got no wireless, no sync, and no AI, he said. Which makes it the only piece of equipment here that can't be hacked or hijacked. Rena raised an eyebrow. You think this is a trap? I think whatever's down there knew we were coming. Or worse, it was waiting. They waited, eyes locked on the analog display. After a minute, the needle began to twitch. Not randomly. In patterns. Morse-like pulses. Rena's voice was quiet. Is that communication? I don't know, Holt said. But it's not noise. A cold wind blew across the crater, stirring dust into the air again. The trench Holt had dug earlier, untouched by drills and safe from collapse, remained stable and intact. His primitive well had skirted the fault line completely. He looked back at the others, watching crews gather in silent clusters, waiting for instructions, fearful of the hole they had torn open. No more digging, he said. Not until we understand what we nearly woke up. And in the depths of the chasm, the light pulsed again, once, twice, then held steady. As if listening. The transmission began at midnight. Holt was alone at the crater's edge, the analog seismograph nestled beside him, like a loyal dog. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent, and the camp lights behind him flickered weakly, constrained to low-power mode by emergency protocol. The Galactic delegation had retreated into high-bandwidth discussions, crafting elegant data packets to explain away disaster. The needle twitched once, twice, then began its dance. Not random, not erratic. It traced shapes in rhythm, hesitated, then repeated. Holt squinted at the readout, breath fogging in the night air. He fished a battered notebook from his pack and began to copy the signal line by line. No translation yet, just raw pattern. An hour later, Rena appeared with 2 mugs of recycled stimulant. She handed one over without a word and crouched beside him. It's back, she asked. Hasn't stopped. Not since 0004. Same pulse rhythm. 4-line loop. AI couldn't decode it. The Galactics fed it through 6 language matrices. No match. Probably because they're expecting language, Holt murmured. I don't think it's trying to talk. Rena frowned. Then what is it doing?
Feeling, he said.
Like sonar. Testing shapes. Looking for resonance. She sipped her drink, the bitterness curling her lip. You're saying the thing under us has emotions now. He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled a chunk of stone from his pocket, the same artifact he'd unearthed days before. It hummed faintly in his hand now, like a tuning fork still vibrating from a distant strike. It's responding to this, he said. Rena leaned closer. It's warming up.
Yeah.
I think it's waking. At dawn, the first of the reinforcements arrived. A flotilla of Galactic Authority craft, sleek and humming with potential, descended like vultures to a carcass. They deployed in silence, spider-like crawlers, tethered analysis arrays, and excavation teams in sterile suits. A tall Varelian commander greeted Rena with clipped efficiency. Your report was received. Central has authorized immediate deep core investigation. We will contain the anomaly and secure all relevant artifacts. Rena bristled. You're treating this like a salvage op. It is. This is not ascension contact. There is no recognized intelligence pattern. Holt stepped forward. It feels. It remembers. I think it's older than your entire alliance. The commander turned his many eyes toward Holt, unimpressed. You're the one with the shovel. Yeah, Holt said, jaw tight. And I'm also the only one who didn't lose a drilling rig. The commander moved on without response, issuing orders. By midday, the Galactics had rigged a containment dome over the crater. Holt and Rena were pushed to the perimeter, observers now, not participants. The analog gear was dismissed. Holt's notes were confiscated. The artifact was tagged for analysis and loaded onto a drone. The moment it passed beyond the crater's edge, the signal stopped. Just stopped. The entire camp seemed to hold its breath. Holt didn't wait. He sprinted after the drone, shouting for it to halt. The Varelian guards blocked his path. Put it back, Holt shouted. That thing was stabilizing the contact. Return to the observation zone, the commander ordered. You are no longer essential to this operation. The drone lifted off, artifact clutched in its clamps. The ground shuddered. Not a subtle tremor. A lurch. A heave. Rena stumbled as the earth underfoot rippled like a tossed blanket. Sirens wailed across the compound. Machines froze. Data streams corrupted. Then came the sound. It wasn't a roar or a quake. It was a note. Pure, harmonic, impossibly deep. It resonated through metal, through muscle, through marrow. The drone dropped from the air like a stone. The artifact hit the ground and cracked open. From its core spilled not circuitry, but light, liquid, golden, thick like honey and alive. It slithered toward the crater, ignoring gravity, pulsing with purpose. The containment dome fractured on contact. Out of the crater, a structure began to rise. Not mechanical, not organic, something in between. It unfolded like a blossom, layers of geometric plates extruding from hidden seams. It pulsed in time with the signal Holt had recorded. The Galactic Authority opened fire. Energy weapons struck the rising form and dispersed like rain on glass. The structure didn't retaliate. It simply grew, expanding its reach, rearranging matter, reconfiguring space. Beneath it, the land itself reshaped, desert flattening, stone liquefying and reforming into latticework patterns. It's terraforming, Rena breathed. It's remaking the planet. Holt stared in awe. Not terraforming. Restoring. This isn't a machine. It's a caretaker. We disturbed its rest. The Varelian commander shouted new orders, demanding quantum munitions. Holt turned to Rena. They're going to destroy it. They can't, she said. It's bonded to the planet's crust. Any high-energy detonation could destabilize the mantle. Then we have to make them stop. Rena opened her comm. All human personnel, priority override. Fall back from the crater. Do not engage. Static. Then compliance. Holt knelt and gathered the remains of the artifact. The inner light was dimming now, but it still pulsed faintly. He stepped toward the edge of the spreading construct. "Are you insane?" Rena shouted. "You'll be absorbed." "I don't think so," Holt said. "I think it knows me." He walked slowly forward. The light met him halfway, curling around his arms, his chest, his face. It didn't burn. It welcomed. He held up the artifact's remnants and felt the resonance hum to life again. The construct slowed.
Paused.
Holt turned back. "Tell them to stand down. It's listening." Rena stared in stunned silence. Behind her, the Varelian commander barked another order. But now, none of the weapons responded. Power systems were failing. A gentle but unyielding interference flooded the area, shutting down violence like a hand smothering a spark. Holt stepped fully inside the light.
And vanished.
No scream. No flash. Just gone. Like a stone dropped into a still lake, swallowed whole by purpose. The construct pulsed once more, then went still. The crater remained, but the light withdrew, sinking into the reformed ground. The tremors ceased. The winds calmed. In the sky, the stars glowed on unchanged. Rena stood at the edge, silent. Somewhere below, deep in the planet's heart, something had been reawakened, and it had chosen. The humans were no longer seen as primitive. They were seen as familiar.